work I do, and he was very surprised that a pastor actually had real jobs. And that encouraged him a little bit. And he goes, all right, tell me about this book you just wrote. And I started telling him about Wide Awake. And I said, you know, it's really about a call to live our most heroic life. And I said, but there's really an underlying story. He goes, what's that? I said, have you ever heard of this thing called the gospel, this narrative called the gospel? He said, yes, of course. He said, you know, Jesus Christ coming into the world, God himself, crucified, buried, raised from the dead, so that we could have our sins forgiven and we could go to heaven when we die. He goes, yeah, I know that. And I said, Wide Awake, subtle narrative is that that's the most narcissistic narrative that has ever been told. That it's the most self-absorbed, personally consuming story. That somehow God would step into human history and it would all be about us. Wide Awake basically is saying that Jesus stepped into human history and lived our most heroic life, and through his death and resurrection calls each of us to live our most heroic life for humanity. And then he said, pass the shrimp. And as we were leaving the restaurant, we're walking down the street, he stopped me in the middle of the street. He goes, you know what you said about the gospel? And I said, yeah. And he said, I've always thought that was the most narcissistic, self-indulgent narrative I've ever heard. He said, but this idea that Jesus died so that we would live our most heroic lives, he goes, now that's intriguing. Then he stopped, ignoring all the cars, and he said, is it possible that Christianity has rejected this narrative because it demands too much of us? And I said, you know, Gary, it's a real possibility that that's what's happening. In the book of Acts, chapter 7 and verse 20, it says about Moses, when Moses was born, he was no ordinary child. I love that. Yeah. Except I don't think it's just true about Moses. I think that it's true for you. I'm a father. My kids were not ordinary. Maybe yours were. But mine were not. Talk to your parents. Maybe your father would say, yeah, you were the one exception. You were the ordinary child, let me tell you. But I have